We are live. Hello, hello, everyone. I am Sherry Reichert-Belul, author of Say It Now, 33 Creative Ways to Say I Love You to the Most Important People in Your Life. And I'm so happy to have Joe Bailey here. Hi, Joe.
Hey, how you doing, Sherry?
Awesome. Joe, you are the perfect guest today, as you know, because your book, Fearproof Your Life, and you have another book coming out too next year. What is the title of that one?
It's called Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane,
Right.
Finding Your Natural Resilience, Finding Your Innate Resilience in Times of Great Challenge.
I mean, could you be a more perfect person for anyone in the world to be talking to right now? I mean, thank you. Thanks for being here, Joe.
Great to
Let's
be here.
let's just start, right? Like as you and I were just saying before we went live, what a time, right? What a time. And we don't need to list all of the different things going on, but there's a lot of fear right now. So, oh, hi, Jeanette. Jeanette says, great title. Awesome. Um, so what I love is I just wanted to start with a quote from your book that you said fear comes from our own state of mind, not from outside events. And that just seemed like a great place to start because there are a lot of outside events right now. Can you say some more about that?
Sure. I mean, fear, by the way, fear is a pretty natural feeling for all of us to feel. And most, during the times that we're in right now, I mean, you just pick a topic and, there's about 1,000 things to be afraid of right now. Whether it's the pandemic and how it's exploding out of control, or the election and the big unknown of what's going to happen on Tuesday, or the fires in California and now in the mountain states in Colorado, climate change. There's just all this uncertainty, all this unknown. And it's natural for human beings. We're kind of hardwired uh,
Hmm.
with our flight and fight response, to survive. Fear gives us adrenaline. It widens our pupils in our eyes so that we're more alert, so we see more and we can run faster. And that's designed into our evolution to survive. But what happens in today's modern world where, it's 24/7 cable news, we've got our cell phones, with the latest headlines, and it's constantly feeding us through our news feed the latest tragedy, the latest white supremacist attack, or you name it. There's no end to it. And the news media is really, that's how they make their money, is they get you to pick up and choose their channel. And I used to, when I would speak on TV with other books, the newscasters would always say, if it bleeds, it leads. So
Oh, yes.
stories that good happy stories don't really make it to the headlines. It's all the stuff that draws us into that flight and fight response. So it's really important as human beings going through this, because we all want to feel safe. We all want to find a way to feel resilient and secure during these challenging times that we're in. And so we have to find something that we can count on. And for
Mhm.
most of us, it's been our mind. We're trying to figure out what's going to happen next. How can I prepare? What can I do? And usually when we're in a state of fear, we get our worst thinking. When you're panicked, like if you're taking a test, you get test anxiety. You can't remember everything you already know.
Right.
Or you're in a circumstance of danger, and if you get too fearful, you get immobilized by the fear. You can't act. And so understanding how we create fear and how we can access this sense of calm in the eye of the hurricane. There's the eye of the hurricane is the part of the hurricane that is absolutely still, and around it are 200-mile-an-hour winds. But in that calm eye of the hurricane, that in as a metaphor is our human wisdom, our ability to have insight in the moment, to sort through what's important, what isn't, what can I let go of, what
Mm.
action should I take. And so when we my book Fearproof Your Life and my new book Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane, both are about helping us to find that essence of our being, that resilience, that true self that is within each of us. And it's divinely designed for insight, for
Mm,
responsive action, for resilient action in the moment. And so, um, what I'm going to talk about in Fearproof Your Life, if you read that book or the other book, they're really pointing to the same fundamental understanding that we're designed as resilient beings and we're designed for insight moment to moment. And it's always been there. If you look back on your life, you'll see that there are times when you were in a pickle or a situation, something kept telling you, you need to do this and you need to do that. And you can even learn by ignoring it. Sometimes we ignore it, and in hindsight, we look back and we think, oh, I should have listened to myself. I knew I shouldn't have gone out with that person. Or I knew I should have taken that job. Or I knew I shouldn't have. And it can be in little things too, like, oh, I should pick up a dozen eggs at the store. Things will just pop into our mind because
right.
that's the nature of the mind. Anyway.
No, so this is great. I mean, so again, what I hear you saying, and your book speaks to this in a thousand different ways, which is, so often, tell me if this is right. I mean, when we're fearful, everything, we're just focused on the external. But you're saying come inward in a lot of, there's so many ways that we could come inward that will help transform that into something else. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily something to do other than to notice that we're
Ah,
fearful. So, can I tell you a story to give an example?
we'd love a story, Joe, please.
So there was a woman that I know who lives in Nepal, and she was in charge of emergency management for the country. And before the earthquake hit there a couple of years ago, she had searched the internet for ways to be more resilient in a crisis, because she noticed that first responders and relief workers, when they were panicked and fearful, they forgot all their protocols. They
Uh,
wouldn't do the things they should do. But those who were able to stay calm in the crisis were able to be a leader, a natural leader, and they could bring the rest of the group along. But so they got into right action, they did the right thing, they remembered what to do, etc. So she, as a trainer, was challenged with what to do. So she learned about the principles I talk about in Fearproof Your Life and the new book. And it sounded too simple to her. What are the techniques? What do I do? And she said, but there was one line that stuck with her from one of the seminars, and it was, we are always living in the feeling of our thinking, moment to moment.
say it again. Say that again.
We are always living in the feeling of our thinking, moment to moment. So you can be in the same situation 1 minute and have fearful thoughts and be immobilized, and you can be in that same situation and recognize it, and it calms you down that it's coming from your thinking, not from what's going on. And that calm will help you see what to do or what not to do.
Yes. Oh,
So
I,
Mahima, this woman, let me just
yeah,
quickly finish the story. So then the earthquake hit after she heard that seminar, and she was, Kathmandu was brought to rubble. 9,000 people were killed from the earthquake, and she was in charge of the response. So there she was in her home, huddled with her family and her nieces and nephews, and they were all waiting for the next aftershock. Here in San Francisco or California, you could probably relate to earthquakes.
yes.
So she was just in terror, and then for whatever reason, her little niece ran up to the group, and she said, "It's over! Can't you see it's over?" And this little 3-year-old, and it hit her at that moment. She said, "I got a second earthquake," and that earthquake was that saying came back in my mind. We're living in the feeling of our thinking, moment to moment. And she said, I realized that my fear wasn't coming from the earthquake. It was coming from my anticipatory thoughts about the next one.
Wow.
And that calmed me down. And I was able to help my family, guide them to safety, and she said, and I realized that I needed to train all the workers in um, Nepal on these principles. So she brought teams of people in from the UK and the US to train the hospital workers, the teachers, the Chamber of Commerce, the airport in these principles that are in Fearproof Your Life. And they were able to stay in the field 4 weeks longer than normal. They didn't get burned out. They were much more resilient. And as a result, they saved a lot more lives. So it's a very practical thing to understand where your experience is coming from. Not from
Wow.
what you're thinking about, but from your thinking about what you're thinking about.
Oh my gosh. And I love it, Joe. I just want to say Jeanette is listening in, and she reflected back that beautiful quote, always living in the feeling of our thinking moment to moment.
Yeah,
And I just want to ask Jeanette, since you're here, if you have any questions for Joe, feel free to post them in the comments. I'm sure he'd be happy to answer anything. Joe, that is thank you for that story. That really does illustrate it. Mm-hmm. So really, let's bring it back, like everything you're just talking about, to this moment in time, right? Because I know one of the things that you also talk about is immunity from other people's fears. And right now, and as you so aptly pointed out, right, the media just is wanting to feed us fear. Mm-hmm. And certainly I know a lot of people around me are living in fear. Can you say a few things about that, like about how do we immune ourselves to that?
Well, it is kind of addicting, isn't it, Sherry? As we're, right. It's hard not to pick up your phone and like, oh God, what happened? Oh, my phone just buzzed. Oh, last minute swing through states. It's the DHS and ICE are attacking. Or, oh, our computer systems are being hacked. It may make the vote irrelevant, etc. So, it's understandable. We're kind of programmed through technology to be on this hyper alert.
Right.
But when we remember that phone is not making me feel this way, that TV show isn't making me feel that way, and that's coming from my thinking in this moment. So seeing our power, that and just really recognizing that it's designed in our mind to clear our mind. Like when you I don't know, let's say you're trying to remember someone's name or something, the best thing to do is to forget about it and do something else, and then it pops into your head.
Uh-huh. I do.
But if you're trying to remember it, you can't. But if you quit trying to remember it as kind of a trick and you do something else, you trust that it'll pop into your mind when you're not pressuring yourself. So it's the same thing with resilience. When we try to be resilient, or we try to do something to get resilience, it actually forces, like a beach ball, it forces it underwater. But if we remove the thinking that's holding it down, it pops up. So you are resilient, Sherry. I'm resilient. We're all resilient.
Yeah.
We've just covered up that natural buoyancy of mental health, of serenity, of peace of mind, with a lot of erroneous, insecure thinking. And when we recognize that, as in meditation, it just flows through, it passes. It just passes through our mind. And that's the biggest secret in the world, that is so simple, yet so powerful. When we see that, we are able to find that we can count on our wisdom, our inner built-in guidance system, to guide us through these very challenging, difficult times that we're in. Jeanette has another question.
Oh,
There's so much fear being proliferated on the news. How do we stay relevant and informed and free of fear? I keep bringing myself back to center and let go of the fear. If you try to let go of the fear, it's kind of like trying to remember the name you can't remember. It reminds you how fearful you are. If you simply recognize, like let's say when you're fearful, your breath gets caught up here, right? You breathe shallow. When you're not fearful, you breathe in the belly like a baby. Belly. So when you're aware of this, just being aware of it and not judging it and not trying to change it, the awareness itself is almost like an elixir that releases the grip on the thought. And once the thought changes, the feeling changes. And once the feeling change from fear to calm, then we have an immunity to the news. We have an immunity, I work a lot with first responders, with police, with firefighters, with surgeons, with nurses. I train these principles in many different organizations where the professional needs to be resilient in order to do their job. And one nurse said, the director of nursing at Mayo Clinic, who I trained, she said, I've taken tons of courses on stress reduction and stress management, but realizing the real root of stress is my thinking in the moment has allowed me to nip it in the bud so that when I'm caught up in a meeting and I'm getting all anxious or stressed out about people not listening or something, just recognizing that clears my mind of the stress and I'm better able to come back to the meeting. Whereas before I had to wait to meditate till I got home and de-stress from the day. Now I see I can do it on the job.
Oh, I love that. Joe, I just had an experience that a couple days ago, I felt all that fear, right, from everything going on. And I have a little patio that I sit outside in, and there was a hummingbird, right? So I just put all my focus on this amazing, beautiful little hummingbird. And I've been using that since then because I noticed how it just changed my whole being. And when I can't get outside, maybe like you're saying, I'm on a call, this happened yesterday, I just remember that little hummingbird.
Yeah.
And that takes me back to, I think that's kind of what you're saying, right? Like we don't have to drop everything and go meditate or go stand outside or whatever, but we can remind ourselves. I think this is what you're saying, right? When we remind ourselves that it's the thoughts.
Yeah. Well, and thinking about the hummingbird, you can't have two thoughts at once, right?
Right.
So when you're thinking about the hummingbird, that's a beautiful feeling. You have a nice association with it. And what that does is it releases the mind from the fearful thoughts, and your natural well-being comes to the surface. So it's something already in you that you can count on that never can be destroyed. It can't be harmed. It can only be covered up in the moment with our thinking, innocently. It's so innocent, and I still get fearful. I still get screaming at the TV sometimes, and I still feel all the feelings that everybody who's reading my books or coming to my seminars or in counseling with me. I'm a human being. I'm going to have the whole range of emotions. But for me, what's different is that I used to have chronic anxiety, panic attacks, and disorders before I learned about all this. And now I might have a little anxiety or even a lot of anxiety, but once I know where it's coming from, it kind of pulls the plug on it. It just dissipates. And so the anxiety doesn't last as long. The fear isn't as intense. Mm-hmm. It doesn't become chronic. It's a blip, but it's not a lifestyle.
Oh, that's so great. And, I want to reflect back something you said, which really helps me, which is when you said our natural, right? There's our natural state and it just gets covered up. And I love that because that really changes, even just thinking about it that way, rather than, oh my gosh, I can't find, where's the calm? I've got to go get it, right? Like what you're saying is that's our natural state. And this other is almost like, to me, I imagine it as some sort of overlay. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so I love that. I love that you bring that into it because even just imagining that, it helps somehow.
Well, it takes a lot off your mind, doesn't it? Because yes. It's something you have to do. You're constantly working at, it's like the devil and the angel in your mind, battling with each other. But when you have that realization and the insight that I'm already well, I'm designed to be resilient. I'm designed to be happy. I'm designed for calm. And because you'll see in the same circumstance, like when I worked at Mayo Clinic in the hospital, you'd have 10 surgeons in the same unit and same caseload, everything the same. One would be stressed to the over the charts, 10 off, ready to quit. Another person with exactly the same workload is loving it and really grateful for their job and to be able to help, and it's busy and it's a lot of work, but they're not stressed. They can go to sleep at night. They don't have insomnia. They don't burn out. So the research we did, 78% of the people who learned these principles, their burnout disappeared. They still had stress, but it wasn't burnout.
Wow. Wow.
And they ruminated less about problems in the future or things that happened in the past. They didn't misuse their mind. They used their mind in the way it was designed to be in the present moment. Little
Oh,
little kids, right? They're
yes.
always in the moment. So they can be really mad at their sister and scream and holler and cry, and 2 seconds later they're hugging them and playing together. So that's how we're designed, like those young children. But we forget. We believe, oh, stress is normal. We're in a stressful world. We should all be going crazy, and everybody's going to therapists, and everybody's going to self-help groups, and doing this and that and the other thing. And so we think this is coming at us rather than coming from us.
Yes.
And that's the paradigm shift.
Oh, I wish we had another 2 hours. This is so
Oh,
helpful.
okay, we can go on. Well, get Fearproof for Your Life. You can learn all about it. And next fall, Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane in September will be coming out. I've got most of it written, but I've been giving lots of talks about it, and people are just so hungry for this right now. People are so suffering during this challenging time we're in, and unnecessarily so, because people, once you gain this, and it can sound too simple, but when you have an insight and realize it, it gives you an immunity, a psychological immunity to the stressors that we do live in a stressful world. But the stressors, it's like there's germs everywhere. There's a virus, and people with a good immune system don't get sick, right? They're the ones that don't catch COVID. So the immune system is for the body is just as important for the mind, psychological immune system.
Oh, Joe, I'm going to be posting the link to your book in the comments so that people, because
Great.
I highly encourage people right now, get it now, because you're right. This is the time. There's so much in there. We haven't even it is not even like the little tip of it. We have to go, but is there anything that you want to leave us with? Any parting words?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that we're all going to be just fine. We've gone through eras in history, the bubonic plague, the Black Death. We've been through the Depression, world wars, and people are amazingly resilient, and we're going to be resilient in this too. And this is just a booster shot to our psychological immune system to help us rebound and respond to this in a way that we can recreate our world and learn from the mistakes that led to this problem. It's a thinking problem. You look at the map of North America and you see the United States and Mexico, and then you see Canada, and you look at the cases of COVID. There's none in Canada practically, and it's all below because of how we've been thinking about it is different. And that the countries that have had good leadership and good following things and working together and not divisive are beating this virus, are able to protect themselves. And that's what we need to learn how to talk to each other, to listen to each other, to come together and work together. Those are the countries that are surviving. And we're doing this.
Yes, we are. I so appreciate, besides all of the wonderful things you've had to say, Joe, I want you to know I appreciate how you are. Like as soon as I saw you, you have such a calming presence, and the way that you just said that, we're going to be okay. I so appreciate who you are, as well as everything that you know and that you're bringing to us. Thank you so
Sherry.
much. It was really fun.
I'm just being myself, and everybody's got the same beautiful self.
Oh, thank you so much. I can't wait till I get to talk to you about your next book after that comes out too. So we'll do this again.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you, Jeanette, for coming.
Yeah.
Uh, from your mouth to God's ear, we are resilient. We can and will come through these times. Thank you for communication matters. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeanette.
Thank you, Jeanette. And thank you to anyone who will be watching this replay. And again, I'll post Joe's book so that you can read all the goodness in it. Thank you, Joe. We'll see you again soon.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.